Our second lesson comes from Daniel chapter 3, verses 19 to 30. Then Nebuchadnezzar was so filled with rage against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that his face was distorted. He ordered the furnace heated up 7 times more than was customary, and ordered some of the strongest guards in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and to throw them into the furnace of blazing fire. So the men were bound, still wearing their tunics, their trousers, their hats, and their other garments, and they were thrown into the furnace of blazing fire. Because the king's command was urgent and the furnace was so overheated, the raging flames killed the men who lifted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But the 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound, into the furnace of blazing fire. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up quickly. He said to his counselors, "Was it not 3 men that we threw bound into the fire?" They answered the king, "True, O king." And he replied, "But I see 4 men unbound walking in the middle of the fire, and they are not hurt, and the 4th has the appearance of a god." Nebuchadnezzar then approached the door of the furnace of blazing fire and said, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out from the fire. And the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not had any power over the bodies of these men. The hair of their heads was not singed, their tunics were not harmed, not even the smell of fire came from them. Nebuchadnezzar said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him." They disobeyed the king's command and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree: any people, nation, or language that utters blasphemy against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins. For there is no other God who is able to deliver in this way. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. There is a candle in every soul, some brightly burning, some dark and cold. There is a spirit who brings a fire, ignites a candle, and makes his home. There is a fire burning within each one of us. Sometimes it feels huge and uncontrollable, and sometimes it feels like a tiny ember about to burn out. But that fire within each of us, whether it feels big or feels small, that is the spark of Christ. It's that love that burns within us. It's something that begs to be shared. It's a candle that needs to be lit and needs to light others. It's a spark of joy. It's an ember of hope. And so today, we talk about fire. Over the past several weeks, as we've considered earth and wind and water and fire, we've thought about these things in different ways. And if the earth is God's body, and the wind is God's breath, if water is God's lifeblood, fire is God's passion. It's the energy and the excitement. It's a transformative power. Think about a forest fire. It starts small and then catches on and burns everything in its path. And though when it's near humans, it's scary and dangerous, and we often deem it bad. But in its natural element, when lightning strikes and starts a fire in the forest, and that fire burns, it's a good thing. It clears the undergrowth. It allows new plants to grow. It changes the habitat. It allows for new wildlife to live in that area. That forest fire cuts down diseased trees, allows new ones to reach for the sun. In its natural state, a forest fire shows us death and rebirth. It shows us resurrection. In our scriptures for today, we have two different images of fire. One of the three men refusing to worship King Nebuchadnezzar, who gets so angry that he heats up the furnace super hot and throws them into the fire. Of course, he chose his best guards for this task, and those best guards who were so good at worshiping Nebuchadnezzar burn up in the process. And yet Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are joined in the fire by God. And even their clothing remains intact without the smell of smoke. Fire is a transforming force. In this story, it's King Nebuchadnezzar who changes. Now, he changes and basically says, all right, all you people who I said to worship me, now all of you have to worship the God of these guys, which may not be the best way to go about winning converts. But he does recognize the power of God. And that is a transition of a sort. We, when we read this story, recognize that fire, that passion that burns within Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego. Because these guys had their life on the line, and they drew a line and said, we will not cross this line. We will not worship you. They teach us to be brave in the face of fire. And brave doesn't mean fearless. It means having the courage to stand in the face of fear. It means being willing to die for our passion, whatever our fire within is burning. And we must recognize our line, because it's what we stand for. When we turn our attention to Malachi, we hear about the refiner's fire, which led me to do a little research. When iron ore is going to be made into steel, it is heated up to a high temperature, and the refining process removes impurities. It takes out the unnecessary stuff and burns it away. The refiner's fire burns away whatever is not necessary and leaves something that is cleaner, more desirable, purer. Leaves behind something better able to do its job. Now, the thing about fire is that it is passion and energy and raging and consuming, and it forces change. But change doesn't come easy. Fire burns away things that we have become accustomed to. Transformation can hurt. Change often hurts. When we stand at the beginning of a journey, there can be anticipation, but there's also trepidation. Fire brings change. And the fire of God's Spirit burning within us is what we need to catch, even when it's scary. But it means we will have to change. There's danger there, dancing on the edge of passion. There's new life, too. Greta Thunberg is a 16-year-old Swedish climate activist that's been all over the news lately. She is on fire for our planet. She is ignited by passion, and she is consuming other youth in her path. She doesn't control the direction the fire will go or the power it will have, but she fans those flames with her passion. She has been consumed. She is transformed, and in turn is transforming others. She is not alone. What does it look like for us to be that passionate? I was reminded again this week that oftentimes, if you want to know what someone is passionate about, look to their budget, because it will show you what they value. When we are all consumed, our time and our talent and our treasure all points toward the same goal. Shadrach and the crew went into the fiery furnace rather than give up their passion. Greta dares to speak out against climate change with her life rather than hiding her flame. The state of our flames can be measured by our actions and our words and our finances. What is it that we are passionate about? How are we being refined? The song that I started earlier ends like this. Carry your candle, run to the darkness, seek out the hopeless, confused and torn. Hold out your candle for all to see it. Take your candle and go light your world. Friends, God's Spirit has lit your candle. You wouldn't be here if that weren't the case. Take it out and show it to the world. Share that light. Share your passion. Don't fear the fire. God is in the fire. Carry your candle. And let's set the world on fire. Amen.